Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for management for this place, Sydney Junction Hotel, for allowing us to do this show here. And today I have a friend who have come from all the way from Malaysia. She came here when she was 2. I don't know whether she was speaking English or not. She's going to tell us. And her name is Cheryl. Can you tell us a little bit of how you came here?
Well, I actually came here when I was 9. So we actually moved to Australia from Malaysia in the bicentenary year, so 1988. I came here with my parents and my younger brother.
So were your parents speaking English when they came here?
They both spoke English, yes. So when I first came here, it wasn't too much of a culture shock in regards to the language, but obviously there were big differences. A lot of Australians, as you know, speak very slowly or they mumble, so sometimes understanding what they were asking me and saying to me was a bit trickier. But I think because I was so young, I assimilated very easily.
Oh, okay. And when you went to school, assuming that you were already staying here,
yes.
You went to school, how did you find school with the language you were speaking?
Well, like I said, because I already spoke English anyway and I spoke it fluently at home with my family, it was very easy. The kids, I think, would have noticed that I had a different accent because I would have had a Malaysian accent, but they were all very welcoming. The teachers and the school made a big point of including myself and my younger brother when we first went to primary school. That made a big difference. And I suppose culturally there was a difference in the fact that what they would have eaten for lunch and what I was used to eating for lunch at school. They all brought sandwiches and things like that.
Yeah.
I was obviously used to having, fried noodles or fried rice, all the Asian delicacies.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was a nice change for us.
How did your parents find here when they came? Because obviously they came when they were adult. Yeah, you got assimilation here very quickly as a child. How about your parents?
I think for them it would have been a bit of a culture shock, but both of them had studied overseas for university, so I think they were used to having to go into a new country and make friends and taking things on board. They had family living here already, so for that reason they had people that could, I suppose, show them the way. They had a support system already in place when they came over, so it wasn't too much of a shock for them. I'm sure in terms of making friends and finding their own niche in the country would have been tricky, but for my brother and I, we didn't notice any difference. I think they assimilated very well. Yeah.
Did you make friends easily in school?
I did, actually. I think the fact that I came so young, kids I think are generally very, very welcoming anyway, so I think it wasn't too much of a shock. So yeah, I made friends very quickly.
Oh, okay. And what about your parents?
I think the easiest thing is always you tend to socialise with family. So I suppose on weekends and things like that, they still caught up with their family first and foremost. They obviously made friends through work. Both of them are working, so they made friends that way. But I suppose like anything, when you're in a new country, you tend to gravitate to the people that you have most in common with. So I think we spent most time with our families on the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they find it to work easily when they arrived here?
Well, they both had both professionals, so yeah, they found work very easily, so that wasn't an issue. And I suppose the fact that both of them had stable careers, and we of course found a house very quickly, all those things, the fact that we had stability, so that in itself meant that we assimilated a lot quicker. So everything was very straightforward for us, thankfully.
Yeah, okay. So have you gone back to Malaysia since you've been here?
I have. I've been back a few times.
Yeah.
The first few times I went back when I was probably in my teenage years, so that was a bit of a shock, going from, a sunny sky, very little pollution, everyone's working at their own pace, I suppose, and you go back to Malaysia and everything's fast, there's traffic everywhere, the streets aren't as clean. I suppose the big thing I noticed was the amount of poverty that was around us. But, it was nice to see where we'd come from and where we've come to here. And it was nice to see family. That was the main thing, see my grandparents.
So when you went back to Malaysia, you sort of got a culture shock in your own country because, like you said, things were not as right as they were there
that's
here.
all right. I think you
Yeah.
take it for granted how good we have it in Australia. So
Yeah.
yes, it was a bit of a culture shock. But I suppose it's one of those things where, because I moved here when I was 9,
Yeah.
I still had memories of what it was like back then. So yeah, I suppose it was one of those things. I could appreciate it for the uniqueness of Malaysia, but I also was very grateful for my life here in Australia.
Oh, did you eat the food over there?
Yes,
Was
yes.
it
So there's
the
lots
same
of
or different?
I suppose it's one of those things where, when I first went back, a lot of the foods weren't available here in Australia as they are now. So when I went back, I had to have the laksa and I had to have the roti canai. So there was a few certain dishes that I was missing, so I had them there. When you come back to Australia, now we're getting a bit better. We have more and more variety in cuisines and things here.
Oh, from Asia?
Yeah, from Malaysia. But it was nice to go back and try the delicacies that I missed.
Yeah, okay. Did you have friends over there?
No, I suppose because I moved when I was so young.
When you were 9, maybe you had a bit of friends. Did you go to school in Malaysia before coming here?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. So I would have left there when I was in year 2. So I did start schooling there, and I remember making friends with a lot of friends there. But when I moved, I suppose because I was so young, it wasn't too hard to let go and move across. I'm sure if I moved as an adult or even a teenager, I would have found it harder to move across to Australia. It was an exciting time to come to Australia. So.
Oh, okay. So you are here in a new country. You, like you said, your parents knew a bit of people here. Can you tell us about the first few days when you arrived in Australia? How was it? How did you find things around?
I remember when we came, it was actually April, so it would have been heading towards autumn, winter time, I suppose. So that was the big thing I noticed. It was so much cooler here than it was in Malaysia, because as you can appreciate, over there it's that hot, sticky, muggy weather. So I suppose that was the big thing, having to wear layers, having to wear jumpers. And there was when we first moved to Australia, we lived in Canberra, so it was like a very dry, different climate.
And cold.
And cold, very cold.
Yeah.
So I suppose that was a big difference, having to wear enclosed shoes, things that you kind of wouldn't even think about, and walking into a house and there's carpet on the floor, things like that we just weren't used to growing up in Malaysia.
Oh, okay. So that was a bit of a challenge to both of you and
my brother. I think it was more the fact that it was different, but I suppose when you're so young, you just take new challenges on. You don't even question it. It's just like, well, I don't know much different. What else can I compare it to? So I suppose we just went, oh, this is a bit different, but you just accept it,
Oh, okay. So, how was the journey? You and your brother and the
My
parents.
family. Yeah.
How did they decide that, okay, we are going to Australia and we are going to settle there? What made them decide that?
We actually came over for a holiday the year before, so I think they came here, saw how well their extended family were doing. So both my mother had her siblings living here already, and I think that was one of the deciding factors that they could see in terms of our future education and opportunities. Australia had much more to offer for us, for my brother and my education. That was what the deciding factor was.
So you came for holiday and decided you're not going back to Malaysia?
Well, we came for a holiday. We went home for a year, and then we sort of said, this is the new future for us.
Okay. So when they decided that, did they let you know that, okay, that's where we're going now, we're going to settle there, and you said, yes, let's go?
I suppose, like I said, it was one of those things when you're that age, it's a case of your parents just tell you this is the decision we're making. And I don't remember being scared. I think it was very exciting, because I remember having so much fun on that holiday, because it was so different from what we were used to. And I suppose there was the excitement of glamour of living in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Now, it's very hard just to move from your motherland with all your property there and just move to a different country. How did they decide that? I'm just trying to imagine how they made that decision. I'm not sure whether they told you, okay, this is why we are going to Australia and we are going to settle there. Did you have sort of a reason why they decided to do that?
I think, like most parents, they were thinking what was best for my brother and I in terms of our education.
Yeah.
I think they thought about the opportunities that we would have that weren't possibly as bountiful in Malaysia, And I suppose at the end of the day, they thought if it doesn't work out, we can always go back.
Okay, so you had a fallback, sort of.
That's exactly right. I think when it came down to it, they had extended family here already, so I suppose they thought, you know what, everything has a risk, but it's a calculated risk.
Okay. So you came here not as refugee, but as
immigrants. Yeah.
Immigrants. So for economic factor.
Economic education.
Education factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's very nice. This is Uncle Johnny's channel, John Obell, and you are on YouTube. Can you actually subscribe on YouTube? When we do all our show, you'll be the first one to get them. And I thank the management for this hotel, Sydney Junction Hotel, for giving us sponsor to our show here. And we'll be back soon.